The night the sirens wailed, everyone knew the pure-blood Omega had been found. Not captured, not saved, found, like a relic dug out of forbidden earth. In a city where alphas ruled with iron laws and betas survived by obedience, her existence was a myth whispered into pillows. Yet when the sky burned red and the alarm split the dark, he felt it in his bones. The sickness that had been eating him alive for years suddenly paused, as if listening. Somewhere beneath the concrete and steel, the cure had taken a breath. And he was already on his way. They called him Kael Draven, the Alpha who could not be healed. His kind had conquered continents after the fall, when the old world collapsed under its own cruelty. Alphas became soldiers and kings, betas became builders and clerks, and omegas were catalogued, controlled, bred until their bloodlines thinned into something safe and manageable. Safe meant obedient. Safe meant deluded. Pure-blood omegas were erased from records, their names turned into warnings. Kael grew up on those warnings, even as his body betrayed him. A disease unique to dominant alphas gnawed at his nerves, shortening tempers, shattering bones from the inside, promising madness before death. Every cure failed. Every doctor lied kindly. Until the old texts resurfaced and said one thing clearly: only the scent of a pure-blood Omega could slow the decay. Only her bond could stop it. He told himself it was necessity that drove him through the Undercity that night, past broken neon and rusted rails. He told himself obsession was a word weak men used when they could not admit hunger. But when he reached the abandoned transit vault and saw her, necessity fell apart. She was chained to a steel column, wrists raw, chin lifted despite the fear in her eyes. Dirt streaked her face, but her gaze was sharp and alive, as if she had been running her entire life and still refused to bow. The air changed around her, warm and wild. His pain receded, replaced by something terrifyingly gentle. Her name was Elara. She had been born in hiding, raised by ghosts. Her mother taught her how to mask her scent, how to slow her heartbeat when alphas were near, how to disappear in crowds. Love, for Elara, was survival drills and whispered songs through boarded windows. When her mother died, Elara learned the city alone, trading silence for shelter, kindness for crumbs. She learned that alphas took and omegas endured. She learned never to believe in rescue. When the hunters finally found her, it was betrayal, not fate, that delivered her to chains. Kael approached her slowly, every instinct screaming possession. The bond tugged at him like gravity. He smelled rain after fire, a promise of relief. She smelled death on him and straightened anyway. He told her the truth first, because lies tasted bitter in her presence. He told her he was dying. He told her her blood could save him. He did not tell her how badly he wanted her to choose him, because wanting was a weakness alphas were trained to kill. Elara listened, heart pounding, mind racing through exits that did not exist. She had been prey her entire life, and now the most dangerous alpha in the city stood before her, speaking softly like a man asking for mercy. She laughed once, a sharp sound. Cure, prey, obsession. She saw them all in his eyes. She told him she would not be caged again. She told him she would rather die than be used. When he reached for her chains, she flinched, and something in his chest cracked. The challenges began there, not with enemies, but with choice. Kael ordered the chains removed and stepped back. He gave her a blade. He told her she could walk out, knowing he would follow her scent until the city ended or his heart did. Or she could stay and make terms. Elara weighed the blade, the doors, the men who had not touched her when he could have. Survival had taught her to read danger. Something about Kael's restraint frightened her more than force. They fled together before dawn, hunted by alpha enforcers who wanted the Omega for breeding programs and the Alpha for treason. The city became a maze of checkpoints and shadows. Elara learned the cost of Kael's sickness when his hands shook, when rage threatened to swallow him whole. Kael learned the cost of her purity when her scent flared under stress, drawing predators from miles away. Every step tested them. Trust did not come easily. He woke from nightmares snarling, and she pressed herself into corners, blade ready. She ran when she could. He chased, not to capture, but to protect, and hated himself for not knowing the difference. Their first real battle was not with soldiers but with silence. In a safe house beneath a collapsed library, Elara confronted him. She asked what would happen when he was cured. Would he claim her by law, bind her, parade her as proof of his power? Kael answered with a truth that cost him pride. He said he did not know. He said the bond pulled at him, but he would not steal her future to save his own. He offered a pact instead. They would work together to find a way to synthesize her blood, to end the disease for all alphas without chaining omegas again. If it failed, he would walk away from her, even if it killed him. Hope is a fragile thing when you have lived without it. Elara almost broke under its weight. She agreed on one condition: she would never be owned. Not by law. Not by bond. He swore it, carving the promise into himself deeper than any oath. The road to resolution was lined with betrayals and small victories. A beta scientist who remembered the old world helped them, at great risk. An Omega underground network smuggled them through borders, whispering Elara's name like a prayer. Kael faced his own people and refused to be their monster, even as the sickness clawed him toward violence. Elara faced her fear and chose to be seen, to speak, to lead others like her out of hiding. The cure took shape slowly, imperfect and dangerous. It demanded trust, synchronization, consent. It demanded that alpha dominance learn to listen. When the final confrontation came, it was in the capital spire, under lights that had never dimmed for mercy. The ruling council demanded Elara kneel. Kael stood between her and the world and felt his bones splinter, the disease roaring one last time. Elara stepped forward anyway. She spoke of bloodlines and lies, of a future where strength did not mean ownership. She offered the cure freely, not as a gift to kings, but as a covenant among equals. The city held its breath. Kael survived. Not because she saved him, but because they saved each other. The cure spread, measured and guarded by laws written with Omega voices at the table. Breeding programs were dismantled. Registries burned. It was not perfect, and it was not easy. Healing never is. Years later, Elara stood on a balcony overlooking a city learning how to be gentler. Kael stood beside her, still an alpha, still powerful, but no longer ruled by hunger. She was still the last pure-blood Omega, but she was no longer alone. Their bond existed, quiet and chosen, not a chain but a bridge. The message the city learned was simple and hard-earned: survival without freedom is not living, and power without compassion is a sickness. Healing begins when we stop treating people as cures or prey, and start seeing them as partners in becoming something better. The city did not change overnight. It pretended to, the way powerful systems always do, by repainting walls while keeping the foundations cracked. After the fall of the council and the release of the cure, banners of unity hung from towers that once echoed with screams. Laws were rewritten, committees formed, apologies issued in polished speeches. But beneath the surface, fear still breathed. And where fear lived, resistance followed. Elara felt it every time she walked the streets without hiding her scent. Freedom was louder than she expected. People stared. Some with awe, some with resentment, some with a hunger that had learned to smile politely. Being the last pure-blood Omega no longer meant chains, but it meant responsibility heavy enough to bow her shoulders. She was no longer just surviving. She was symbol, promise, threat. Kael watched her carry that weight and hated himself for every moment he wished he could take it from her. His body was healing, slowly and imperfectly, but his instincts had not softened as quickly. Every alpha who looked at her too long set his nerves on fire. Every whisper felt like a challenge. He reminded himself daily that protection could turn into possession if left unchecked. Loving her meant restraint. Choosing her meant trusting her strength. The first true challenge came disguised as diplomacy. A coalition of outer territories requested Elara's presence. They claimed they wanted guidance, inclusion in the new order. Kael read the subtext easily. Control through proximity. If they could not own the Omega, they would bind her influence. Elara read it too, and accepted anyway. They need to see me as more than a legend, she said, calm but resolute. And you need to let me go without turning this into a war. Kael did not argue. That was the hardest part. The journey exposed wounds the city had hidden. In mining settlements where Omegas still slept behind locks. In research hubs where diluted bloodlines were praised as progress. Elara spoke, listened, argued, and sometimes simply sat with those who had never been allowed to hope. She refused guards. She refused ceremony. She insisted on consent in every discussion, every experiment, every alliance. Slowly, resistance